Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. Again, in the process of moving, this is why the background looks like that. So this video is another rambly one about how to get inspiration for game design. Now this is a topic which has been covered a bajillion times, so many times, and I think every designer gets asked it by aspiring designers or designers already in the industry. They get asked, how do you get inspiration for your ideas? Now, this is especially poignant when you are a lead designer or a principal designer or a designer or a director, more so like a creative director, which I am at. I'm all of them at Crab Studios, because you are seen as being someone who's in charge of coming up with ideas, not just someone who's following ideas or iterating on ideas, that sort of thing. And it's interesting because whenever I've been asked, this is like I usually either get asked at a convention or by my students, like, how did you come up with this idea? Like, this is a unique idea, or this is just an idea. How did you come up with it? And the answer changes based on the game for the most part. Like, you can get the TLDR is that you can get inspiration anywhere at any point, depending on how your brain works. It's less forced, but for the most part, for me, and this is something which I've sort of been longing to do as well, which is weird. But it's to spend as much time as you can in your free time not being occupied. Like, just having your mind wander and having your mind not have something to focus on, like TV or your phone, or anything like that. And just either doing mundane tasks or nothing at all. Like, for example, when I came up with the idea for Fatal Knockout, I was delivering pizzas. I was in my final year of university, and I needed a bit extra money to be able to pay for rent, and so I applied to be a pizza delivery driver, and that's what I did for about 3 months, and I think it was like a month in. I'd already come up with loads and loads of different ideas for games at that point, but when you're just driving, delivering pizzas, I'm not saying deliver pizzas to get inspiration, but I was just thinking like I was into my fighting games at the moment, at that particular moment, and I was like, oh, wouldn't it be great to have a tabletop version of a fighting game which really, really felt like a fighting game? Because there are a couple of games out there, but they like sort of just look like a fighting game. They don't feel like one. They don't have that. I don't know. There's that ingrained feeling like this feels like how I feel when playing a fighting game, even though I'm not moving sticks on a controller, even though I'm not mashing buttons, that sort of thing. And I was like, okay, that's the idea. That's what I really want to do. I feel really good about this. And so then 2 years later, Fatal Knockout is nearly out. But yeah, so that if I had to give just if we ended the video now and I had to give just one thing to do, is be comfortable about the idea of being alone with your thoughts, which is I don't know, like some people struggle with that. I know I do. But I think it was with Landscape, like I came up with it in the bath. Also just chilling in the bathroom with Food Time Battle in Space. I think I came up for it. I came up with also I was reading like a game design book or something like that. Yeah, it's just one of those where, that's the way my brain works. My brain is good at coming up with ideas. That's why I wanted to be a designer. I felt like I'd be naturally somewhat good at it, about coming up with ideas and concepts which could work. But yeah, and if I was to say a couple of suggestions, and these are suggestions which have helped me when I'm struggling to work on an idea which I've already come up with, it's to play games, really, which is another one which people have probably said a bunch of times. But playing games which are either in a similar genre or just like a completely different genre, and just getting like inspiration from a particular mechanic, or from a way a rule is portrayed, or like how elegant a problem has been solved in terms of the game design, in these board games. all these video games, you know, just like seeing how other people have done it and being like, oh, yeah, that would make my game better. Or, oh, I know how to make that better, and I'm going to do that in my game. Which was the case for Langskip. With Langskip, which was the game which I published and designer published before Fatal Knockout. And I'm not afraid to say this, because I think that a lot of games do this, and it just makes sense. Is the entire design process of Langskip, after coming up with the initial idea of it's going to be a Viking racing game, was I wanted it to be better than Coup. I wanted it to be a bluffing game, and I wanted it to be better than Coup. And that is very difficult to do, considering Coup is one of the best-selling, greatest bluffing games of all time. But I personally had one particular problem with it, which was that I personally dislike the player elimination side of things. So I dislike the player elimination side of things, and I also didn't like how the odds of certain cards coming up were a bit too difficult to track and card count, and then also the fact that the odds would just keep getting lower and lower and lower. I prefer the odds to be dynamic based on the stage of the game. And all those things I thought about and was like, yeah, this is what I want to do. I want to make a game which is just better than Coup. And thankfully, I feel like I did that for a lot of people. For people who don't like the player elimination in particular, because without all the additional nuances which are designed into the game, on the surface, 100% the best part about Langskip is the lack of player elimination. And it's the key point of differentiation between Langskip and Coup, is the fact that there's no player elimination. And in all the reviews, it's always brought up is like, this is Coup, but without player elimination, and it's usually quite positive about that. And so I feel like I accomplished that. So if you were ever sort of stuck for inspiration, and you like playing a game, you love playing a game with your friends, but there's this one element which you really don't like, and especially if it's a small game, because like one element in a small game can be like 20% of the whole design. But if it's like a huge 4-hour game, changing one element, it will probably just look like you're copying the game, because it's probably like 2% of the original design. Then yeah, go for that, workshop that. One other thing which I tell my students to do when I teach concept development at the University of Huddersfield, which is a design module where we make a board game, because board games are fundamental game design practices and principles and projects, all the P's. Yeah, one thing I tell my students to do is to, and I have to be careful when wording this because some of them take it way too literally, is to take a video game that they really love and turn it into a board game. Now, what this means for some people is literally turning a video game into a board game, but what I mean by that is taking either the feelings which you feel when playing a video game and turning it into a board game, like I did with the Fatal Knockout and fighting games. And it was particularly Smash Bros at the beginning, but then that changed later into Tekken and more 2D, like sort of side-scrolling fighting games rather than platform fighters. Either take the emotions which you feel when playing the game and turn that into a board game, or take one particular mechanic which is suited to a tabletop experience and turn that into a board game, because that can give you I'm not saying it will give you a full game, but it can give you a great foundation to move forward from. And again, don't try and make an entire video game into a board game. It's not gonna work. It won't work. Video games, for the most part, are not suited to a tabletop experience. But yeah, those are kind of the three things. So just to reiterate, the first one, and I think if your brain is well suited to do this, then definitely is like the first protocol, is to just allow your brain to wander, or do menial tasks, or just do basically something which does not occupy your brain, to let your brain juices flow. It might not happen straight away. Don't try and force it. Instead of doing that for the purpose of coming up with cool ideas, maybe just shape your life around your brain not being occupied more often, which I think is just good for mental health anyway. The second one is to look at board games, if it's board games or video games, find something which is something you're not particularly happy about, or maybe something which you're getting, which is like super inspiring, and you're like, I want that mechanic, but I want to do it a bit better. Or like I said again, finding a mechanic in a board game, an otherwise great board game, and changing it, and then using that as a foundation to make your game. That will help jumpstart sort of any inspiration. And then finally, looking at video game and seeing like how can I take the emotions which I feel playing this video game and turning it into a great board game experience. But yeah, that's it from me. Thank you guys for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. It was quite rambly, but hopefully I helped you with your inspiration for some game designs. Thank you and goodbye.